Welcome back to Blockstream Talk. Today we're talking to Rich Grambergs from the Jade product and support team. After a long list of blowups over the last couple of quarters across the exchange, lending, and fund spaces, and now also failures emerging within the banking sector, counterparty risk and the importance of self-custody is really being highlighted. Jade is Blockstream's hardware wallet and part of their suite of products to support self-custody. The Jade team has rolled out a number of new features over the last couple of quarters, including the activation of the camera that's built natively into each device. So the topic of today's conversation is all things Jade and the importance of self-custody. Why bother? What can go wrong? Where demand for hardware wallets is strongest? How to build your own device if you're so inclined? And new features that are in the pipeline for the second half of this year. If you find this conversation useful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Welcome to the show, Rich. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so maybe to set the stage for today's conversation, why don't you let us know, who you are and what your responsibilities are at Blockstream?
Sure. Yeah, so been at Blockstream a couple of years now. I work on the Jade product team and also help out with some support technical stuff. So help users figure out how to use our wallets, our devices and stuff. So I cover a good bit, but mostly Jade product work and developing new features and helping out engineering and doing everything I can there.
So I think it's a pretty interesting time, for Blockstream and for a lot of Blockstream products. Given the news of the last couple of weeks, we were just chatting off camera about the news and how we weren't going to talk about the news. But having said that, I think, you kind of can't ignore it. So we've had a huge amount of blowups in the crypto space over the last 12 or 18 months. And then, very recently, we've had 3 high-profile bank failures just in the last couple of weeks. And, we're seeing terms like FDIC coverage limits back in the headlines for the first time, really, I think, since the last financial crisis in 2008. And I think that makes a lot of the thematics around Blockstream products and things, relevant to Jade, like self-custody. I think that's all very topical at the moment. So maybe just to dive into it, what do you think are some of the major developments and changes in self-custody landscape that have occurred maybe in the last 12 or 18 months?
Yeah, like you just said, a lot of high-profile custodian blowups. More recently with the banking stuff. It's really interesting to see. I think people are finally realizing that custodians are not maybe as safe as they thought they were, and self-custody maybe seemed like the riskier option. And how do you hold Bitcoin keys or how do you hold your own assets? But it's becoming much more real for a lot more people, and I think a good amount of people in the market right now weren't there for Mt. Gox, and maybe they don't totally understand the risks involved of keeping their Bitcoin somewhere, keeping anything, even cash places now, it seems like, what that means and what the risks are. And if there are risks, and they just assume if someone else has it, it's probably safe. But of course, that's all changed in the last few months, especially. And it's cool to see people really diving into the self-custody space and realizing how important it is. I think a bunch of hardware wallet manufacturers came out and said that they had their best weeks ever in sales. And that usually doesn't happen during bear markets. So it's cool that people are realizing that there is something there, it is important, and they need to figure it out. So I think we're going to see a lot of cool development in this space.
If you think basically, what is the fundamental problem that Blockstream is trying to solve with the self-custody solutions?
Totally. Yeah. Blockstream's working on a lot of different stuff in this area. It's an intimidating thing. What do you do? How do you hold your own Bitcoin? How do you hold your own assets?
Yeah.
I think we live in a day and age where people are used to seeing a forgot password button and they can get help getting, back into their account. They can very quickly have someone else assist them. And that's because someone else is controlling their assets or their funds or whatever it is that they might have stored somewhere. And, that's nice for some situations, but you can see it's also bad for a lot of reasons too.
Sure. What could go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think Blockstream's trying to make this a lot more redundant, less error prone, more user friendly. For example, we'll talk about Blockstream Green's multisig shield, which is Blockstream Green is Blockstream's wallet app on desktop and mobile. And there's 2 different options you have when setting up a wallet. You can choose a singlesig wallet, which is just a normal recovery phrase, 12 words that you need to spend your Bitcoin, recover it, whatever you need to do. And then we also have multisig shield. So multisig shield is actually a 2 of 2 wallet where you get a recovery phrase that everyone is used to, 12 words, but then you also have Blockstream hold one of your keys for you. So this is a really clever solution, because what happens is whenever you want to spend Bitcoin, you'll sign with the key that you have, and then Blockstream will automatically sign whatever transaction you ask it to sign if it has the correct 2FA code from you. So you can set up something that everyone's used to, 2FA. It's use it for your bank, use it for lots of different stuff. That's technology people are used to, and they don't need to kind of dive into how multisig works, but they're getting the extra protection of multisig through this, very clever solution that Blockstream has. So two keys, one you have, one Blockstream has. I think some people get a little jittery around that, and they say, oh, well, that means Blockstream has one of your keys. It sounds like you're using another custodian, but we have a really clever way around this to make sure that Blockstream doesn't have control. You don't need to trust Blockstream. And this works at, once you get your Bitcoin into your wallet, there's a time lock that begins, and you can choose this 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. The time lock begins when Bitcoin arrives. And after that time lock, Blockstream's key is no longer needed to spend your funds. So it's kind of this cool way to have this extra protection where your recovery phrase is not the single point of failure. If someone finds it, they can't spend your Bitcoin. They'll also need your 2FA code. But let's say Blockstream servers go down. I guess you don't want to trust us. They go rogue. Then after 6 months, 12 months, whatever, your Bitcoin is now spendable just by you. And so I think Blockstream's working on a lot of cool stuff like this. Miniscript is another thing worked on by our research team. And that's just going to allow a lot more situations like the Blockstream Green model I described to be more accessible to people. People can develop a lot more interesting stuff on top of it. So I just think we're going to see more redundancy, self-custody being less prone to errors and mistakes. And there's going to be a little bit of, some backups that help people actually get to their funds in case they make a mistake.
So the fundamental problem is that there's a lot of benefits towards, for holding your own Bitcoin, and there's a lot of risks with outsourcing that and letting somebody else hold it. But at the same time, there's a lot of responsibility, and people forget passwords, and there's probably just a large intimidation factor if people just don't want to, try because they're worried about messing it up. And this kind of gives them a bit of a parachute, right? A bit of a safety net.
100%. Yeah, exactly.
And maybe also like inheritance applications as well. Like if you pass away or something, then, is there some kind of application for that?
Yes, there are already apps doing inheritance planning and people looking into interesting solutions like that. So again, we're very early in the space, I think, especially Miniscript, stuff like that. We're going to see some cool solutions like that where, let's say you have a wallet that you can spend keys from just with, let's say, your Blockstream Jade. But after a few years, maybe two other keys that you have are able to spend that Bitcoin. And if you have this mistake where you lose your one recovery phrase, you lose your one device, whatever, there's going to be other ways for you to access your funds. Maybe some family members hold your keys, but they can't spend it yet. So yeah, like you said, just a lot more redundancy, and there is room for mistakes, which, we're humans, we're going to make mistakes. I think it's very important.
So is that a one size fit all application? Is it primarily for all users, or, is it focused at retail or institutionals? Do you differentiate at all like that? Or do you guys have conversations with institutional users as well? Or how do you split that up?
Yeah, I think it really depends on, there's a lot of companies building on this stuff right now. Blockstream is early in the development phase, but there are companies who are working on, there's an insurance company that's out there that's going to focus towards a lot of other, high net worth individuals, and working with businesses and having ways to where it's not as intimidating for you to hold funds anymore. And it's the research that Blockstream is developing that's really going to allow a lot of cool use cases. Of course, we'll have our own offerings too, but it's essentially, going to be whatever you need it to be is going to be developed, especially just being this early in self-custody. We're going to see solutions that maybe we're not even thinking of yet that people end up coming up with that are going to change a lot and make it way less scary, which it needs to be.
So what's the sales pitch for a Jade hardware wallet? What are the key features that it has?
Yeah, Jade is super interesting. I would say even the last few months, last year or so, it's gotten to be an even more powerful, versatile device. I'll talk about last year real quick because we had a very cool feature announcement with the camera being activated. So in January 2021, Jade was released, and there was a camera on the back, but it didn't do too much. So you could scan a recovery phrase QR code. You could temporarily log a wallet or load a wallet onto your Jade using that, but QR codes are hard to create safely. And what are you going to go into your computer and print it out? And it's just all over the place. You don't want your keys laying around like that. So it's mostly used for testing, but there was a camera. And so everyone was asking us when camera. We eventually got the functionality built in this year, activated the camera that was always sitting there, and for something we call QR mode. So to dive into this a little bit more, QR mode allows you to send or receive Bitcoin only using the camera and QR codes. So before, where you would use USB or Bluetooth to communicate with your companion app, let's say Blockstream Green, but Jade works with a bunch of different wallet apps, you're communicating with the camera and QRs. So if your companion app needs to send you a message, let's say it's saying, verify this receive address, make sure it belongs to your Jade wallet. You would scan the QR code on your companion app. Jade would then get that information by scanning it, and it would display the receive address on the screen, which you could confirm or deny. So same thing with sending Bitcoin. You can craft a transaction on your companion wallet. You can put the recipient, the amount, scan it with your Jade, get all the information on your Jade, sign the transaction, and then get it back to your phone by showing that same data signed transaction as QR codes, scan it with your phone, and then broadcast to the network. So every workflow you could do before with Jade and USB Bluetooth, you can now do with the camera and QRs, which is really cool for several reasons. One of them being compatibility. So now instead of using USB or Bluetooth, you need to get an integration with new wallet apps. You can instead just use the standard that's emerging called BCUR, used by, I think, every QR app that's out there right now. So the second we turned it on in Jade, it automatically worked with all of these new apps, just because we supported the standard. So that allows us not to, individually one by one say, we need you to put USB support, Bluetooth support, whatever it is. You can just work Jade with these apps right out of the box. So compatibility is huge. And then some people also like it for the fact that you're physically determining when data is sent or received from your Jade. So you can only get data on your Jade if you scan a QR code, where before it could be connected via USB or whatever. You're choosing when that data transfer happens, which is pretty cool too. But again, there's trade-offs with everything, and different communications are better. Communications methods are better for different reasons, but for the most part, it's just makes Jade an even more versatile device, makes it work with more mobile apps, for example, which before it was only Blockstream Green and Bluetooth. So now just a lot more options for users.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool feature. I wonder why other major hardware wallets don't. It doesn't seem like that's a very common thing to have, right? A camera integrated with your hardware wallet, but it seems kind of like a no-brainer, like a very useful kind of add-on.
It definitely is, yeah. And I think a lot more people are working on devices to, have cameras. I think this is an emerging standard. It's going to be pretty big. I think QR and maybe NFC are going to be some good ways to do this, more user-friendly, I think, especially with the compatibility. And I think we're going to start seeing way more of it.
So you mentioned the companion kind of wallets that work with Jade. Of course, there's Blockstream's Green. What are the other kind of wallets that work with Jade as well that you guys have done integrations with or partnerships with?
Yeah, so pretty much every major one. Electrum, Sparrow, Spectre, Nunchuck, Blue Wallet, Keeper is a new one that's in beta right now. They have QR code compatibility with Jade, and that's a new app, and we didn't have to work with them at all. They just added us on there because we have the QR standard. So it's cool to see any new app that pops up that uses QRs, Jade will automatically be compatible with it. So works with pretty much everything. HWI, if you want to use it with Bitcoin Core. So yeah, Jade, very versatile. Use it with pretty much any app.
Do you have any update on when we'll be able to do BTC to liquid Bitcoin conversions within Green?
No timelines quite yet, but I know that's in the works. We're looking into some clever ways to maybe implement that in the app. But for now, nothing definitive to give you.
Oh yeah, I'll write a support ticket.
Please do.
What about the reseller program? What's going on in that, and how has the response been in that so far?
It's been really cool. Our team is working really hard to kind of expand Jade's international reach. Right now, you can order Jades from our website and get them pretty much delivered anywhere in the world. But the reseller program is really helping people get their Jades faster, more reliable, less fees from customs, for example. They don't have to be paying that directly. And so it's going really well. We've got at least 10, I want to say, by now, and all over the world for the most part, Europe, Brazil. And the response has been really, really cool. I think people are excited to be able to get Jades, faster in their country. And I'm excited to see where that goes. We're also working on warehousing internationally just to make sure Jade's more accessible to people. And again, Jade is a open source hardware wallet, so you can build it yourself if you want to. It can be DIY'd, and so even if you don't have a reseller near you, you're far away, you don't want to order from our website, you can build your own Jade, which is really cool. So I'm excited to see kind of just how many people these things are able to get in the hands of.
Do you guys do any analysis on where the demand for the wallet comes from geographically?
We do, yeah. And I think it's interesting to see. a lot of the kind of East Asia region is really blowing up and getting a lot of demand and traffic there. I think that's something that, especially with the QR release, I know some users reach out to us and they said,
Yeah, I was thinking, yeah.
yeah, they said we use QR codes for a lot of stuff around here. So when that came out, everyone just was a natural fit. They said that this is the device for us. This is the one we want to use. Um, so that's been a really big market lately. It's interesting to see that kind of. I don't know if we were expecting it, but once the release happened, that was been a big place for us.
Maybe you can run us also through the blind pin server, how that works, and why did Blockstream choose to do that kind of security setup?
Yeah, great question. We get asked about it a good bit, and I think it's a really clever solution. So, just to walk through how it works real quick, when you set up your Jade, your wallet is encrypted very heavily with the help of your PIN, and the key needed to decrypt your wallet is held with a something called a blind oracle. So, every time you want to unlock your Jade, you'll put in your PIN, and your companion app will mediate this encrypted channel with the blind oracle, which can be your blind oracle you run on your computer or one that Blockstream uses, which is what we recommend for a couple different reasons, but we can talk about that in a second. And if you enter the correct PIN, they'll have some data sent to the PIN server. And if you get the blind oracle PIN server, if you enter the PIN correctly, you'll get some data back. They'll help you decrypt your wallet, and then you can start spending your Bitcoin from Jade. So we chose this method for a few reasons. One of them is that it keeps Jade truly open source. So there's no NDAs surrounding secure elements, and you can build your own device if you want to for the same reason. And it also helps Jade become way more accessible. Like the price point is much more accessible to many more people just because we're not using all these expensive chips. So a lot of cool reasons why we did it. And I think it's nice that you can also choose your security model with Jade. So if you want to use Blockstream's blind oracle, which we recommend because you're kind of decentralizing your security a bit. If you run your blind oracle on your laptop or on a Raspberry Pi in your home, everything you need to unlock your wallet is pretty much all in one place. But our Blockstream blind oracle method allows you to kind of keep that data elsewhere. It's not all centralized in one location. And let's say it goes down for example, that's maybe one reason you wouldn't want to use it. You can just use one in your house, or you can use Jade without a blind oracle by scanning a seed QR, which we can talk about too, or just entering your recovery phrase manually. So a lot of different ways to unlock your Jade, a lot of different things that we offer, but the blind oracle is a really cool way to very heavily encrypt your wallet, but also keep Jade fully open source.
Very cool. And what kind of a user do you think is primarily the Jade targeted at? Like your average Bitcoin user, or kind of high net worth, or?
Yeah, I might be a little biased, but I would say
Aren't we all?
Yeah, it's the perfect device for, I would say, almost anybody. Just because it's very versatile, very wide range of functionality. So just to walk through the experience levels, if you're a beginner and you're not really sure what to do with this hardware wallet you just bought, Jade offers a dedicated companion app that Blockstream Green. You can very easily connect with it, USB or Bluetooth. We have very, very nice setup flow that's just been introduced in Green. So you walk through every step, what a hardware wallet is, how it works, and it really gets you set up very quickly. And so that's a nice thing to have. Not every hardware wallet has these dedicated companion apps. So especially with Bluetooth, which you can set up with your mobile app, people are just used to these flows. And so it's very easy to get set up. But if you're an advanced user, you might have different needs, and you might say Bluetooth doesn't fit in your security model. Well, we offer things like a no radio firmware variant, which doesn't include any drivers in this firmware to communicate wirelessly. So there's no Bluetooth drivers in this thing, in this firmware variant. So if you want to totally disable that, you're free to do so. Jade also has a ton of advanced features, too many to even get into, but a ton of advanced features, works really great with multisig setups. And there's just pretty much, like, you can customize this device to do almost anything you want it to do, which is cool. It makes it, again, very usable for a lot of different people. Use the camera for QR if you're technical. And
other than Bitcoin, what other assets does the Jade wallet support?
Yeah, Jade works with Bitcoin and the Liquid sidechain. Maybe I'll touch on this real quick too, just because we have a very interesting feature coming out soon, which allows liquid swaps. So the fact that Jade supports Liquid, it's soon going to be able to swap different liquid assets with people trustlessly. So you could store something like USDT in your Jade and buy liquid Bitcoin on the next dip trustlessly with another person. Cold storage to cold storage, you could trade from your wallet to someone else's from your Jade. No need to put your funds with a centralized custodian or anything first. It's straight from your Jade to someone else's Jade, which is really cool. And that's, I think, a good reason that, liquid assets can be used a lot for this, and there's no need for this centralized custodian in a lot more of these situations. You don't need to put your funds somewhere else first and then do your trading from there. You can trade directly from your Jade because it does support the liquid sidechain in some of these assets.
Does that also include security tokens that are issued on Liquid, like things like the Blockstream mining node?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a really cool use case for Jade, is being able to store some of these security tokens like the Blockstream mining node, like some of these companies issuing their shares on Liquid, things like SideSwap. To be able to hold these assets in your Jade is a pretty cool thing. And I think we're going to see a lot more security tokens blow up on Liquid, and allowing people to trade these back and forth, like I said, with the liquid swaps, being able to do that without a centralized custodian.
Yeah, as we mentioned early on, I mean, there's probably, I feel like the news and the way things are developing, there's going to be more kind of a demand for that, right? As people get more worried about counterparty risk with so many failures across the crypto ecosystem and now even the banking ecosystem as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I think this is coming at the right time.
So you mentioned some of the features that have been rolled out over the last year, I guess the main one being the camera. What do we have to look forward to over the next 12 months or so? What are the big features you guys have in the pipeline?
Yeah, some very exciting stuff. 2023 has already been a really big year for us. We've already put out a few releases, very heavily filled with user requested features. Some things like calculating final words. So this allows you to generate a recovery phrase totally offline. You don't need your Jade, with methods like rolling dice or flipping coins, and then entering those, let's say first 11 of 12 words that you've created offline into your Jade, and Jade will help you calculate the final one for a valid checksum, which has been very highly requested. People just, really want to flip those coins 100 times in order more times than that, but to get their recovery phrase. And it's cool that people can now do that totally with dice, very cypherpunky. And then we've also put out BIP85 support for generating child recovery phrases. So now you can do something like, if you have multiple wallets, it's really cool. Let's say you want a hot wallet on Blockstream Green, but you don't want to have to create all these extra recovery phrases, all these extra backups. You can now create recovery phrases from your parent recovery phrase on Jade. Let's just say the one recovery phrase you have very well backed up. And then you can generate a new one using just an extra index number. So let's say you choose an index number of 5, you use your recovery phrase on Jade to generate a brand new recovery phrase that, if it's compromised, it cannot compromise your Jade wallet funds, but it will let you create a new recovery phrase. Let's say you could restore to Green and start sending and receiving funds there, which is cool because, again, you don't need to back up a bunch of recovery phrases. You just need to know your main one and the index number. This also works for, let's say you want to let's start practicing with your family and getting some of your kids set up on Bitcoin wallets and letting them see how it works to self-custody. You can just keep a backup of their index number and they can play with it. If they lose their recovery phrase, you can get it for them real quick. So a lot of cool different use cases there. I think even more will pop up in the future too.
So what about Lightning integration? I'm sure that you get asked about that all the time. Are there any plans in the roadmap to develop Lightning integration?
Yeah, so this is actually something that our Green team is working on right now, using Greenlight and just having some Lightning in the actual Green app. But we also have some very exciting stuff coming around Jade in this department too. So right now, a big downfall trade-off of Lightning is you need to keep it on a hot wallet, and that's going to keep a lot of funds off of the network. But Jade is working on something that allows you to essentially sign your Lightning transactions by plugging your Jade into your laptop, and you can have it approve certain transactions and let these Lightning transactions go through if you want to. So your keys are stored on your Jade, but it's allowing you to sign this stuff using your laptop. So I think that's a very, very cool, interesting use case that's going to get a lot more people on Lightning. It's going to make it safer to use. And I'm very excited to have this come out, hopefully soon.
That's cool. What's the timeline on that?
It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. It's in the works. Yeah.
And what about the UX for Green? Is there any changes in that coming, or what are the plans there?
Yes, our team has been hard at work on improving just the UX, the UI, everything surrounding Green. Kind of like I mentioned, the Jade setup flows are going to be changing, get a lot more educational. There's going to be easier ways to get to your wallet, faster ways to get into your wallet. The whole UX UI is changing to where Bitcoin and Liquid will now be accessible under one wallet if you want them to. If you don't want them to, you don't need to add it, but it'll be very simple to add a Liquid wallet, and eventually in the future add a Lightning wallet, and just do all these things in one place instead of how it's segregated now, where you need a separate recovery phrase and wallet for each one. It's all going to be in one place, which is going to make you be able to interact with Bitcoin however you want to, and whatever layer you want to use, you're going to be able to use very seamlessly. And so, again, with this new UX UI, very, very huge. And with this, again, Lightning support, we're working on some more watch only capabilities, so where you can use your Jade you can receive funds to your Jade wallet without having it plugged in for singlesig, and eventually add some more hardware integrations too. So a lot of new stuff coming to Green. Our team's been very hard at work on some of this, so excited to get it out there.
So I guess outside of Jade, Trezor and Ledger are kind of two big, two of the biggest names I think in the hardware wallet space. How does market share break down? Is this an industry where there's like one or two very dominant players? Have you guys done any analysis on that? How difficult do you think it is to kind of break into that market?
I would say it's definitely dominated by a few players right now. Of course, Ledger's the big one, and it's interesting because they support a bunch of different coins and not just Bitcoin only. And I think that's probably a good reason for their success. And
Yeah.
people, aren't quite bought into Bitcoin only yet. It's still the market at large just thinks crypto is this one big basket, and they need to
Give it a couple months.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I'm going to say. Yeah, I think Bitcoin dominance is going to just continue increasing. People are starting to realize that it really does matter, and truly a decentralized network is important. It's not just about holding the next 1000x token. It's about what does this stuff actually do? What is it actually useful for? So I do think we're going to start seeing people move towards these Bitcoin only products in the future.
Yeah, well, what I meant is like kind of on the regulatory side, as more of that stuff kind of get puts under a microscope. But who knows? I mean, it's human nature, right? People, the appetite for Ponzi is never ending, right? So people just naturally, like to have a punt and gamble, so that there's always interest on that side as well.
Yeah.
Going back to the advantages of single signature versus multi-signature wallets, how would you split that out? Like, how do you kind of describe that to people?
As with everything, there's trade-offs, and so we'll just talk about each of these works, what the pros and cons are. Single sig is probably the one we'd recommend for most people, especially people starting out. It's just one thing to back up. It's just a recovery phrase. It's very easy to recover and spend from, but it does mean you have this central point of failure where if someone gets you 12 words, your Bitcoin is gone. So again, great for practicing, great for a lot of people still just in general, but it's different for everyone's threat model. And you need to kind of think about, what are you more worried about? Losing your coins due to complexity or due to them being stolen? So if you kind of want to boost your game a little bit, you're an advanced user, you're ready to build some more security into your system, you can use something like multisig, where instead of just those 12 words, let's say you have a 3 of 5 wallet where there's 5 keys geographically distributed and you need 3 of them to spend your Bitcoin. Of course, it's going to be more complicated setup, but it's also going to be harder to steal, or for someone to get all 3 of your keys in order to spend. With multisig also comes some extra challenges with backing up. You need to make sure you have your wallet config and all the things surrounding around that. If you lose it, then you need all 5 keys to restore your wallet. And there's just a lot of things that can go wrong. And so more security. And again, everything is trade-off. So it's also harder to back up. And I think you just need to be, no matter what you choose, you just need to be very sure that you know what would happen in any scenario, how you would get access to your keys. To your Bitcoin if you lost one of your keys, or if you just you practice that setup. Pretend you lost 2 of your 5 multisig keys, and what would you do in that scenario? What if your phone broke and your wallet config's no longer there? So it just needs to be thought about by each person. Like, what are they concerned about? What is their threat model? And just practice. Make sure you know what you're doing in case something happens.
What do you think are the biggest failures that people make in their self-custody practice?
Yeah, I would say probably just trying to get too complicated with it, too technical before they're ready. And I see a lot of people using passphrases, BIP39 passphrases, which is essentially just extra information you're adding to your recovery phrase that's needed to generate your private keys. And so people will turn this on. They hear from someone it's a good idea to have an extra passphrase. They don't totally understand how important it is, that it really is part of your recovery phrase, how your seed is generated. And they'll just have the recovery phrase. I lost my passphrase. Can you just reset this for me? You don't see really the understanding of what some of these features do. And so I think just trying to get out ahead before you're ready for it, and trying to add extra security without totally understanding the implications of it can definitely be a big problem.
I mean, I would imagine most of the users of Blockstream products are kind of like classified as power users, right? So probably more sophisticated users, kind of pushing the edge on what they can do with the features.
Yeah, definitely. But you'd also see people coming in, they want a hardware wallet. Jade's very easy to use, and maybe they just want to add more security without totally understanding the implications. Kind of like we said earlier, there is no forgot password button. So if you go too far in your setup before you're ready, then some not great things can happen for sure. But for the most part, yeah, it's all about education. help people just start slow, practice, and move up when they're ready.
Yeah, I think there's a freedom of self custody, but there's also, sometimes it can be stressful, right? Be your own bank. It can be stressful at times, and there's a lot of pressure.
Totally.
You were recently at Bitcoin Park doing a Jade demonstration. How did that go?
Yeah, so I think it went really well. I think a lot of people walked away from it with a really clear understanding of how Bitcoin custody works and what hardware wallets are for and what they do. Um, people kind of are in this mindset of if you see a number in an app, it means that you own an asset. They're used to seeing their bank account, their brokerage account, whatever it is. And clearly, we've seen that's not the case, but that's also not the case with Bitcoin. And realizing that this thing is what holds your private keys is super important to understand. And I think just being able to give people a clear, thorough understanding of how this stuff works and that your Bitcoin's not in your hardware wallet. Unfortunately, some of the terminology in Bitcoin is a little bit, it's nuanced and the analogies aren't always perfect. And so I think when people hear the term like hardware wallet, they assume their Bitcoin is stored in this thing. And that even that small nuance can cause some confusion. So I think having time to just really sit down with people, explain to them how this stuff works, what hardware wallets are for, was really cool and really important. And we got some time to practice sending, receiving testnet Bitcoin and really walk them through exactly how the process works and what they would do if this was their own device. And people came away from it with a really cool understanding of how this stuff works. And I think that it went really well. And we're excited to do more of those in the future.
Do you guys have any plans to tour internationally or to participate in any Bitcoin conferences or anything like that to kind of highlight Jade and functionalities and new features coming out in the pipeline?
We definitely do. I think we're going to have some presence at BTC Prague. So if you're there, come find us. And then also just working on more of these kind of smaller scale workshops too, just to have time to hear from a lot of different people about how the device works. We walked away with some improvements that we knew we could add to this device and kind of the setup flows and just getting like that one-on-one experience with a lot of beginners is even helpful too. So Bitcoin conferences, these workshops, we'll be doing some in Atlanta soon. And it just as much as possible, get this device in people's hands, help them learn how custody works and just keep on spreading, the knowledge around how this.
Yeah, I guess that because Blockstream products kind of tend to skew towards power users, it's probably really valuable for you guys to get some input from kind of newer users as well to understand, kind of their impressions of dealing with this stuff.
Definitely. Yeah, there's things that I had never thought of or heard before, just not understanding that you can't just enter your PIN on your Jade and that you need this encrypted mediated channel with the blind oracle. And so you'll see questions pop up that you're not usually used to hearing, and just making the device more usable for everybody is really important. So I'm glad we got that feedback.
So what are some of the more common questions that come in towards the help desk? What are the kind of support tickets that people are raising and problems that people are encountering with the device?
I would say kind of like we talked about before, just understanding of security models and what is multisig shield? How does that work? Does that mean Blockstream holds my Bitcoin? Kind of explaining how the certain models work. A lot of stuff with passphrases. You'll see people enter a passphrase on their setup, or you can kind of understand that this is what they did, but their Bitcoin disappeared and they no longer see it. And first question is, we're using a passphrase with your Jade. You need to make sure that you're entering that because it is part of your wallet. It's not just this extra information that you can enter sometimes. If you have the wrong passphrase, it's going to generate a different wallet and your Bitcoin's not going to be there. So mostly questions related to security, how our models work, how different Bitcoin security, things like passphrases work, and just making sure they know how to get to their Bitcoin if they need it is a good part of it.
And how does Blockstream support work? If I ping the help desk, who's on the other end of that?
You're going to get me most of the time. You might get one of my associates, Drew. But yeah, I'll be there to answer any Jade Green technical questions for sure.
And what are you guys doing to help get Jade into the hands of more customers and support emerging markets? I think, with Bitfinex and Bitfinex Securities, we've got a real strong focus on emerging markets. What is Blockstream doing in terms of Jade to focus on those markets?
We briefly mentioned this, but just kind of trying to improve our international distribution, I think, is a big part of it. Making sure it's easier to get Jades through resellers or international warehousing or whatever we decide to do. But also, I think the DIY aspect of Jade is going to be really important, and just being able to use commodity hardware and take advantage of the security model that we've chosen with the blind oracle, and just being able to build your own device if you want to. I think that's going to be more accessible, both just availability wise and price point wise, to a lot of people. And we're working on some ways to make this DIY process even smoother, make it much more easier for the average person to do, which I think is going to be really important for a lot of these areas.
How does that work? How does the DIY process work? Is there a list of components, instructions? How does that work?
Yes, we do have a list of components instructions on our GitHub repo, but I think right now it's maybe a little bit too tailored towards people who do know what they're doing with command line and are able to figure out this process kind of by themselves. I think there's some people in Telegram groups trying to help people through it, but we'd like to just have it to where you visit a web page and you can flash your commodity hardware with the Jade firmware and boom, you're good to go. So I think that's going to be one of the things that helps is just having this process much more smooth and user-friendly, beginner-friendly to where really anyone can DIY Jade if they want to. Just buy the hardware and they are good to go.
Is that out of interest? Like people just geek out on the tech, or is that out of demand? They're in a country where, maybe it's difficult to get hardware wallets.
I think it's both. And I do think there's definitely demand around. There's something to be said about you built your own device. You don't need to worry about some extra things like supply chain risk and some stuff like that. So there are a lot of value props to people doing it. And I think that the easier it's become with some of the devices out there, the more likely people are to actually try it. And you'll see someone tweet about building a device like a seed signer, and they're just saying, "Oh, this was way easier than I thought. I plugged a couple pieces in, flashed this SD card, and it was good to go." So I think people think it's cool. It's definitely like a fun thing to be able to build your own hardware wallet. There are risks involved in some of this stuff. I'm glad that Jade has the blind oracle, but it's just another way to it's just another way to kind of choose your threat model and what you're worried about and what you're willing to go through to get a hardware wallet.
So final question, looking into 2023, what are the things that you're kind of most excited about?
Yeah, I think a lot of different stuff. I think a lot of stuff coming to Jade, like our performance boosts are going to be really big, make Jade feel like a lot more powerful, a lot faster device in general, kind of tweaking some libraries, trying to get our camera scanning even more reliable. And then we have a ton of exciting features I would love to share. Maybe not quite ready yet, but stay tuned for that because we have some cool stuff coming. And then just in general, I think, like we said, with self-custody kind of becoming more important and more prominent, just in general, I think we're going to see a lot of really interesting solutions. A lot of people building on this stuff, things like Miniscript, building some really cool, redundant, less error-prone self-custody options to make sure that everyone can do this if they want to. That if they make a mistake, their Bitcoin's not gone. It's going to be a huge year for that, and I think it's just going to continue to grow and blow up in the next few as well.
Well, thanks a lot, Rich, for joining the show today, and we'll definitely have to have you back on as some of those new features start to roll out in the next 12 months or so.
Definitely, would love to. Thanks, Jesse.
Great, thanks a lot.